There are 2 participants in this conference. Please announce yourself.
This is the 523 Happy Hour with your host, Kelly Lincoln, here on netrootsradio.com. Oh, yeah, it's me. Who would have thought it? Oh, it is Saturday. So I'm not going to be able to participate. Yay, boo, hiss. What can I say? I've had a week like I've always had. And so today it actually took me a while to get started on this show. So I have going off in the background some background coffee house noises of just ambient sounds. No music, but there's like blithering and blah, 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 rutabaga, blah, 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 cowboy, towboy, and all that sort of stuff to make me feel like I'm not in my studio. Because not only am I a world-class procrastinator, I'm a champion. I hold several gold medals in that I find it terribly difficult from time to time to get started. And for no other reason than I just sort of sit there and go, I've got to do this. I've got to get started. It's got to go. And it just takes me a while to get started. So what can I say? I'm doing it. Yeah, baby. And so the week's been interesting for me. I think I said in my last show, got the official word that I am now, thanks to one of the medications I am on, a type 2 diabetic. Yay! God, I love side effects like that. At least I went off of one and my blood pressure came down. Now I just like diet control and exercise. Have to go in. I absolutely have to use my gym membership now. I've used it once since I've had it. I need to use it more often if I intend to get myself going. I'm going to turn my audio up here because I see by my meters that it was a bit low. And so I saw a nutritionist this past Thursday and got some good insights as to how to handle my diet because, quite frankly, with all the concerns about the insulin resistance and the cholesterol, which I actually found out could be part of the insulin resistance thing and not actually high cholesterol, because I don't eat all that crap, the stuff that gives you high cholesterol, but there could also be a genetic component. Who cares? I'm not doing the DNA test to find out. Sometimes you just don't want to know these things. You just take it, on faith that if you had a family member, like a parent, with high cholesterol or high blood pressure, the likelihood is that it's going to be the same with you, So it was like rather interesting speaking with her. Put me on medication. I'm now taking a low dose of a medication for type 2 diabetes called metformin. And so far I've been lucky with no side effects. Yay! Watch, they're all going to come up later today when I'm at work. Or Sunday when I'm at work. Yuck. Past week, Wednesday, I went to the Small Business Expo here in New York City, and for some reason it wasn't as exciting or as interesting as it was to me for the previous year. I guess it's because it just seems smaller. I did not see the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, a couple of other businesses that I had seen the previous year, but it just seemed that it wasn't really as small business oriented. A lot of it had to do with, insurance, HRA, and point of sale, and all the standard things that you need for your business. But it just didn't feel the same. However, I did get a few leads for my podcasting and some of my other voice work, so it all worked out well. Grab my business cards, dudes. And spent some time talking with a couple of people there, and we were comparing card stock on our business cards and trying to figure out, oh, yours from Moo.com, not our Vistaprint. Oh, mine are from Moo. Great basic, good sturdy card stock, and that's what you want with a business card. Good sturdy card stock, so it can be like abused and not fall apart in somebody's pocket. So even if you're going to print your own, get a good quality card stock. You'll be glad you did. Even if you print them yourself on a laser printer, you'll be glad you did, because it'll come off looking sturdier the stock, the more professional it is. And did a workshop the following day on getting PR, and that was really interesting. That was one of the better. We want to sell you something types of workshops, because this one actually, it wasn't so much that they wanted to sell you something. They were looking for, you couldn't buy your way into the program that they were pitching at the beginning of it. You had to apply for it, and it had to do with building your business and coaching and mentoring. And so this particular workshop was the first one I've taken that I actually got value out of, which makes me really happy. And so that's what's important, is that stuff that, that you can information that is actually useful to you, rather than just giving you a little drip and then making you pay to get the real deal, the real stuff. That was really nice. So, and this was like in between my visit with the nutritionist and something I had to do for my weekend job. And so after I saw the nutritionist, I went to Times Square and tourist watched, and that's always fun to tourist watch. Got some nice sun. Got my vitamin D fix for the week. And so just when you're watching tourists, I'm looking around, and I'm looking across the street, and it's like 45th Street, and I'm looking at the corner of 45th and Broadway and going, where did Bubba Gump go? Bubba Gump's a restaurant in Times Square. I'm thinking, wow, where did it go to? Turned out that I was looking that the restaurant is still there. It was just on 44th and Broadway. Blah, 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 blah. So that's what that's just the way it worked out. Good. And such a beautiful day yesterday. Hated to spend the next hour and a half indoors at the workshop, but it was well worth it again. And as I sat tourist watching, I had a bit of lunch, because that's always important to eat, especially on warm days, and hydrate. And I played with my GoPro and just all that other good stuff. So, what we normally do. And if you wish to support the show, you can go to www.patreon.com and become a patron. I had some tiers, but I have to upgrade it because they took it away. But you'll get a nice thank you from me. Let me see what we got here. I'm going to go to my Patreon. And see what we got here. Yeah, they made some changes. They decided to make us pay for the stuff they were previously just giving to us. Oh, I still have my tier. So you can go to patreon.com/ATT show, and you can help support the show by donating, one-time donation or a recurring donation from $1 to $30, because I got some really cool things to give to you if you donate. can join as an apprentice for $1, journeyman for $10 or more per month. And that, see, for the apprentice, I'll give you a shout out on the air. Journeyman, shout out and a handwritten thank you note delivered to you by UPS. Or, excuse me, the United States Postal Service. Not. And if you join as a tastemaker, which is $40 or more per month, you'll not only get the shout out, the handwritten note, thank you, you'll also get a hand-bound 48-page journal made right here in the U.S. of A., mailed directly to your door. Such a good deal. And, what more can you do? What more can I ask of you? Just something to help me defray my costs and get some upgrade of the, because, I'm also looking to start doing some live streaming, and the current software I've got, I really like it, except it starts, when it's not screaming and rubbling, it's a really good piece of software. And I've talked about it before, but after reading through, and I've observed this out, after reading through the subreddit for the software, that it's not people's rigs or anything, it's the software itself. I work on a nice MacBook Pro Retina 2015 laptop with an i7 processor that's 3.7 gigahertz. So it's a pretty fast processor. And and the software complains. If I go into studio mode, which in this has, you've got your preview window and then what you're actually streaming, which always shows a lag even when you're not, which is what? No. I've had to drop frame rate, and it's just, I'll spend the money to get something I know is going to work and won't have any headaches. And I know it's not, but whine, bitch, moan, whine, bitch, moan, whine, bitch, moan. So, you can also follow me on the Twitters, ATT Show. That's the name of my Twitter feed. Show Twitter feed. And as soon as I get my Twitch stream up and running on a more consistent level, like I said, get the live stream bugs worked out, come and watch me do this on my live stream. But be aware, naughty words, banned words are not allowed. Yeah, there we go. So, with this being Pride Month, I thought I'd read you a bit about one of the veterans of Stonewall. And to start it off, I'm going to play you a clip of Stormé Delaviere, who was a drag king, a male impersonator, described as a butch lesbian, who had a small scuffle with the police at Stonewall, and it is believed that the scuffle with the police, along with some other incidences that happened, is what ignited the Stonewall Rebellion. So, with much ado, I'll let you talk about it. And this is taken from a In the Life episode that was aired on PBS.
Punch that started a revolution. Some say it was Stormé Delaviere, a legendary drag performer in the Jewel Box Review. But who is Stormé? In 1999, SAGE, an organization for gay and lesbian seniors, honored her with its Lifetime Achievement Award for, in their words, her courage and enthusiasm in crashing the gates of segregation, and for the gender-bending example she showed the world.
Gay people are always looking for role models. It's a cliche, but it's true, and she's as good a one as we're going to find. Someone who's learned how to grow up and grow to a great age and not grow old and still be enthusiastic about life and still capable of making new friendships and, understands more about what life is about than most people.
Who's Stormy? I'm a human being that survived. I've helped other people survive.
Stormy DeLavier was born to a wealthy white father and a black mother in New Orleans, Christmas Eve, 1920, caught between two worlds from the day she was born. Her father had her privately educated while her grandfather raised her.
Well, he finally told me, because everybody, the white kids were beating me up, the black kids were beating me, everybody was jumping on me. If it wasn't because of my father's money, it was because of being black, being a Negro with a white face. Yeah. So he told me if I didn't stop running, I'd be running the rest of my life. And when I was 15, I stopped running, and I haven't run a day since.
After leaving home, Stormy sang with jazz bands across the country, developing the silvery baritone that would serve her well in her next incarnation.
So I tried to do the proper thing, wear men's clothes on stage and wear women's clothes on the street. I got picked up twice for being a drag queen. Well, the guy that arrested me once for being a drag queen came in, clubbed me, said, he said, "You don't know how to tie." I said, "Well, if I'm not tying my tie right, why don't you come in every night and show me how I'm supposed to tie?" And he did. To this day, I can tie a bow tie with even looking in the mirror, and it'll be perfect. And he was always laughing. He was a nice man. He was only doing his job,
In 1955, Stormy became the one girl in the Jewel Box Revue, a traveling musical show of gender deception. While her girlfriend watched from the wings, Stormy would now perform as a man.
Somebody told me that I couldn't do it and that I would completely ruin my reputation and that people did not have enough problems being black. I said, I didn't have any problem with it. Everybody else did.
She made a very handsome man. It worked for her.
In June of 1969 in New York City, Stormy found herself at the epicenter of the Stonewall riots. If there was a friend in need, Stormy would be there.
That was no riot. Everybody says a riot. It was a disobedience, and then they started fighting back. It was a rebellion. And once they got the hang of it, they rebelled quite well.
Well, many different people say that there was a cross-dressing lesbian who sparked the Stonewall riot, but to the best of my knowledge, no one had ever found someone who fit the description quite as well as she does until I interviewed her, and she said the cop hit me and I hit him back.
I walked away with an eye bleeding, but he was laying on the ground, out.
She says I was there and I did this, but then when I read an account of the cross-dressing lesbian who started the riot, she said, "Oh, I know who that was, but I'm not going to say."
Well, I got into it by accident. And then Charles Kaiser, when he wrote his book, Gay Metropolis, was trying to figure out how it started, when the fight really started. They were just running around, calling names and things and throwing toilet paper down from the windows and what have you. And I just walked up. I used to come in whenever I came in town to go down to see if anybody needed help or if they were in jail. I could get them out, what I could do. I looked like I was 20, but when that happened, I was 48 years old.
In the month following those fateful nights, Stormy's girlfriend of 26 years passed away. And
Yes, Stormy was an amazing woman. She also toured with the Jewel Box Revue, which was the first integrated drag show, and she was also the only actual female in the show, and she was the MC, dressed as a man, and at the end of the show she did a reveal saying that, look, I am female. Going on about the Stonewall uprising, again she said, quote, "It was a rebellion, it was an uprising, it was a civil rights disobedience, it wasn't no damn riot." And according to her Wikipedia page, and she's being very modest about her, in her retelling of it, is that at the Stonewall Rebellion, a scuffle broke out when a woman in handcuffs, who may have been Stormy, was roughly escorted from the door of the bar to the waiting police wagon. She was brought through the crowd by police several times as she escaped repeatedly. She fought with at least 4 of the police, swearing and shouting for about 10 minutes. Described by a witness as a, quote, "typical New York butch," unquote, and, quote, "a dyke stone butch," quote, she had been hit on the head by an officer with a baton, for as one witness stated, announcing that her handcuffs were too tight. She was bleeding from a head wound as she fought back. Bystanders recalled that the woman, whose identity remains uncertain, Stormy has been identified by some, including herself, as the woman, but accounts vary, sparked the crowd to fight when she looked at bystanders and shouted, "Why don't you guys do something?" After an officer picked her up and heaved her into the back of the wagon, the crowd became a mob and went, quote-unquote, berserk. It was at that moment that the scene became explosive, quote-unquote. Some referred to that woman as, quote, "the gay community's Rosa Parks." Nobody knows who threw the first punch, but it's rumored that she did, and she said she did, said Lisa Kinastracci, a friend of De La Vare's and owner of the Village lesbian bar Henrietta Hudson. She told me she did. Whether or not De La Vare was the woman who fought her way out of the police wagon, all accounts agree that she was one of several butch lesbians who fought back against the police during the uprising. And one of the primary reason I am devoting this time to Stormy De La Vare is that, to a great extent, it appears that the women, the lesbians, have been erased from Stonewall, from Pride, because, well, just because of the nature of women and settling down and not being as all out there as some people are. And the other reason I'm talking about her is because she was a community activist. She cared for the people in her community. She made sure that they had what they needed, that they were protected. She acted as a bouncer at and security at several of the lesbian bars. She was licensed to carry, and she carried. And she was a regular at the gay pride parades until she became too ill to attend. She was a member of the Stonewall Veterans Association, and she held the offices of Chief Security Ambassador in 1998 to 2000. She was the Vice President. For decades, De La Vare served the community as a volunteer street patrol. Early, she was a guardian angel where there were no guardian angels patrolling. Was asked Curtis Slew as to why that never happened. A street patrol worker and, quote, guardian of the lesbians in the village. And in her obituary, she was described as tall, androgynous, and armed. She held a state gun permit. Miss De La Vare roamed Lower East 7th and 8th Avenues and points into her 80s, patrolling the sidewalks and checking in at lesbian bars. She was on the lookout for what she called ugliness in any form of intolerance, bullying, or abuse of, quote-unquote, baby girls. She literally walked the streets of downtown Manhattan like a gay superhero. She was not to be messed with by any stretch of the imagination. And that, again, that was from her obituary in the New York Times. In addition to her work for the LGBT community, she also organized and performed at benefits for battered women and children. When asked about why she chose to do this work, she replied, quote, "Somebody has to care. People say, 'Why do you still do that?' I said, it's very simple. If people didn't care about me when I was growing up, my mother being black, raised in the South, I said I wouldn't be here." She worked as a bouncer until she was 85 years old. There is in 1991, there was a documentary made about her. It's supposedly on YouTube, but I was not able to find it. But you can find that in the live segment that I played, I think, a little too much. She was an amazing woman. I never had the opportunity to meet her, and in fact, until recently, I didn't even know of her. And I've been hanging out in some feminist Reddits and listening and reading about how the lesbians in these groups are concerned about their spaces being erased for various and sundry reasons. If I say what they're saying, I would be called nasty names, so I'm not even going to go there, but they are concerned about their losing their space, their ability to be women with women in their own spaces, to be safe, to not have to deal with not so much male gender, but male sex. And hearing their perspective, it's rather interesting because as of late I have not... The trans women that I know have gone through the full transformation, and they are living their lives as they believe a woman is. And when I think of a transgendered woman, I think of one of the pioneers when it was very, very difficult for people to go and get a gender reassignment surgery. Especially in the 50s and 60s. You need, if you want to know more, just look up a name, transgender. At one time they were known as transsexual, by the name of Christine Jorgensen. And Christine started life out as a male, served in the military, and then through gender dysphoria and years of going through therapy, finally had to go to Europe, to Scandinavia, to get her gender reassignment surgery. And it's just who she did the talk show circuit and that, but it's who she was. And she never referenced being trans. She was it was never part of her vocabulary to always be saying, I'm transsexual, I am transgender. She had done the reassignment surgery, and there she was a woman. Can't say female because that is sex. That is biologic. But she said she was a female. A woman. And I don't know what to say about that anything else, because I know some of you listening to this are going to be highly offended by it. And all I have to say is, I'm sorry. I accept trans women, trans men, but I do have issues with the loudmouth of activists who scream transphobia because a woman doesn't want to sleep with them. And you're listening to the 523 Happy Hour here on netrootsradio.com.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
And welcome back. We're going into another segment, which is a little bit lighter. I'm so old. I remember when Ronald Reagan's USDA tried to make ketchup a vegetable in context of school lunches. And that didn't last very long. It was very, very quickly backtracked. Because when asked what would make ketchup a condiment, a vegetable, a full-blown vegetable, what other things, the response was, a hamburger or French fries. Yeah, I put it's your vegetable. Instead of putting a tomato on your hamburger, that tomato becomes, that fruit, that tomato. And tomatoes are fruit, by the way. That tomato ketchup, that becomes the fruit. That becomes the vegetable. Well, the FDA has something similar in a newer proposal, which they want to expand the definition of variety in meat and the like, and what would constitute the variety. In order, as they claim, to get looks like convenience stores be able to accept food stamps. And among the things that they think would really be a great idea is they describe, there's been a lot of mockery about making beef jerky a staple item. But in the example they listed as these are exemplars that they put down. And the reason they propose beef jerky being included as a staple is because it is shelf-stable beef. Kind of like canned chicken is shelf-stable chicken. And canned tuna is shelf-stable tuna. Or canned mackerel, or sardines. If it's in a can, it's shelf-stable, which means it will live almost forever. And that is why that they proposed beef jerky. And I'm going to read it directly from the proposed rules. And this is to reach the required 7 varieties in the meat, poultry, or fish staple food category under this change. For example, a store could stock the following: canned ham, shelf-stable pork; refrigerated bacon, perishable pork; beef jerky, shelf-stable beef; refrigerated deli slice, roast beef, perishable beef; frozen chicken breasts, perishable chicken. See where this is going? Canned chicken, shelf-stable chicken; canned tuna fish, shelf-stable tuna fish. But you notice they don't say anything about, fresh fish or frozen fish. This is just illustrative and not meant to be exhaustive. The proposed change to the definition of variety would provide considerable additional flexibility in the meat, poultry, or fish staple food categories, as this change would effectively double the number of available varieties in this category, where staple food is available in both perishable and non-perishable forms. And they also, under cheeses, say that Cheese Whiz, or salsa, actually. Where is it here? Nacho cheese dip, which is cow milk-based, cheese-based sauce, would be considered a dairy staple. Let's see. The 5 examples of acceptable varieties of fruits in, lemon juice would be considered a staple. Olives, would also be considered a vegetable or fruit staple. Well, olives are a fruit, so who knows about that. But in 1981, Ronald Reagan's FDA tried to tout, again. Where is it? It's in front of me, and I don't see where it is. Oh, my God. It's hiding from me. Oh, Ronnie Reagan. There we are. Yeah, this is from 1981. This was the budget director, David Stockman, not the... He had ordered the withdrawal of proposed federal rules that would have listed ketchup and pickle relish as a vegetable in school lunches. Stockman's rough-edged remarks... Oh, this was written September 26, 1981, by the way. Stockman's rough-edged... The only reason that they dropped it is because the public said, that's baloney. Once again, that buzzword flexibility turns up in the 1981 as well. The president and I both feel that the intent was sound and in step with the administration's goal to reduce regulation and return flexibility to the local units of government, Block said. James Johnson, an aide to Block, later defended the regulations. There was a great misunderstanding in the land as to how these regulations are viewed. I think it would be a mistake to say that ketchup per se was classified as a vegetable. Ketchup in combination with other things was classified as a vegetable. What other things, he was asked. French fries and hamburgers, he replied. Can green eggs and ham be far behind? You see, these guidelines in 1981 were supposed to help schools that provide free or reduced price lunches to lower income students as they try to deal with a $1 billion cut in federal support for the fiscal year. The administration had been ridiculed since it released the regulations, which would have set the minimum lunch requirements for a kindergarten child at 4 ounces of milk, that's half a cup, half a piece of bread, half a cup of fruit or a vegetable, and 1 ounce of meat, about 1/4 of a medium-sized hamburger, yes. Nutritious but not filling. So I suppose that piece of bread, that 1 ounce of meat would have been on that half piece of bread. It would have been an open-faced sandwich. Jesus fuck, I had just graduated college. On Thursday, a group of Democratic senators invited reporters and photographers in as they ate a school lunch consisting of a meat and soybean patty, a slice of bread, and a few French fries, ketchup, and a partially filled glass of milk. And yesterday, even a Republican Senator, John Hines of Pennsylvania, whose family owns the H.J. Heinz Company, said, quote, ketchup is a condiment. This is one of the most ridiculous regulations I ever heard of, and I suppose I need not add that I know something about ketchup and relish, or did at one time. Let's see. So yeah, it just goes on. So that was 1981, and in 2019, almost 50 years later, a 2001 rule from the U.S. Department of Agriculture required stores that take SNAP to carry a variety of foods in each of the 4 staple food categories: meat, poultry, or fish, dairy products, bread or cereals, and vegetables or fruits. Stores must also carry at least 1 perishable item in at least 2 of the categories. Under the new proposal, which was introduced, canned spray cheese, Cheese Whiz, or canned cheese dipping sauce, nacho cheese sauce, would count as a dairy, pimento stuffed olives would count as a vegetable or fruit, and beef jerky would count as meat. And I read you that regulation. The USDA said the new proposal, quote, provides greater regulatory flexibility to SNAP retailers, particularly small entities, in meeting the enhanced stocking requirements of the 2016 final rule. Now, I've gone into some of these smaller entities, and it looks like that 98% of the stuff on the shelves has been there like forever. I've been in larger stores where they will sell stuff that is like definitely bad. Let's see. Quote, "You don't have to have a nutrition degree to know that canned spray cheese sauce is not a staple food," Margot Wooten said, the group's vice president for nutrition, told Bloomberg News. And this is the Center for Science in the Public Interest, which first reported on the proposal. She compared it to notorious Reagan administration federal school lunch policy, which sought to ketchup as a vegetable. Those are not real food you could serve to your family. So, and we had until yesterday, Friday, June 7th, to comment on it. But of course, since nobody knew about it, there were no comments to be made. Aha, she says. Very clever of them. Very, 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 very clever. And, this is definitely not from The Onion, but it's true. Fun fact. Did you know that in Mexico, that it's not considered a jailbreak if you don't okay. This is about the strange case of the non-criminal jailbreak. In 1971, a man by the name of Joel Kaplan escaped from Mexican prison. And this is how it was described. Most of the 136 guards at Mexico City Santa Maria Acatila prison were watching a movie with the prisoners last week when a Bell helicopter, similar in color to the Mexican Attorney General, suddenly clattered onto the prison yard. Some of the guards on duty presented arms, supposing that the helicopter had brought an unexpected official visitor. What they got was a different sort of surprise. As the chopper sat down on the paving stones, 2 prisoners dashed out of cell number 10. The men were airborne in less than 2 minutes. One of the most enterprising jailbreaks in modern times had been accomplished without a shot being fired. Kaplan, one of the 2 escapees, was a prominent New York businessman from a wealthy family. In 1962, Kaplan's business partner, Louis Vidal Jr., had been proclaimed dead in Mexico City. Kaplan had been charged with killing Vidal, even though there seemed to be doubts for whether the body in question was actually Vidal's. The other escapee was a Venezuelan named Carlos Antonio Contreras Castro, in jail for counterfeiting. After the escape, the prison noted that Kaplan and Castro's wives had visited the day before, accompanied by an American man who seemed to be surveying the prison yard. Following the flight to freedom, the helicopter delivered the 2 men to a private plane at a nearby airport, which in turn delivered them to an airport near the Texas border where they split up. Castro went to Guatemala. Kaplan made his way to California. The real twist, however, came later. After arriving in the U.S., Kaplan insisted that the entire process had been entirely legal. The prison in Mexico had not been damaged in any way. No one had been hurt. Both the helicopter and the private plane used within Mexico were purchased outright rather than rented, so it would be impossible to make any claim that they had been used improperly, and everything about the flight was done according to FAA standards. When crossing into the U.S. and Texas, Kaplan and the pilot both used their correct names when speaking with customs officials. His escape, the lawyer claims, is perfectly legal since jailbreaks are a crime in Mexico only if violence is used against prison personnel or property, or if prison inmates or officials aid the escape, Time reported. Of course, Mexican authorities disagree, insisting that the use of the accomplices, the pilots in Kaplan's case, makes the escape illegal. However, Mexican officials have not yet initiated extradition proceedings against Kaplan or his partners, who seem to have pulled a practically non-criminal jailbreak. It was the inspiration for the Charles Bronson, Robert Duvall movie Breakout. So that's kind of cool. Not sort of makes you kind of go, wonder what else could be done that would be criminal yet non-criminal. And pardon me while I tear this up too, since I'm done with it. So gotta admit, pretty clever. Now, who bought the plane? Who bought the helicopter? Did they file an FAA flight plan? Obviously they did. So, what else is there to say about that? And you're listening to the 523 Happy Hour here on netrootsradio.com.
We're all pawns, my dear.
Powered by Unity Net. You are listening to netrootsradio.com. We are Resistance Radio. netrootsradio.com.
Dead air. Oops, let's hear it for Dead Air again. I always mute my microphone when I'm running the spots, just so if I'm coughing or blowing my nose or something, you don't have to hear it. But as I was saying, in April of last year, a dear friend of mine, a man by the name of Dennis Day, who was an original Musketeer, disappeared. And despite the numerous welfare checks by the Phoenix, Oregon police, and the searches of the property, there was no trace of Dennis. His car was found 200 miles away, being driven by people who did not know him, but said that Dennis had let them use the car. In August of last year, neighbors complained of a foul odor coming from the house. By the time the police got there to check it out, there was no odor. Nothing looked amiss. The handyman, roommate, said that Dennis had gone off to visit friends on foot and was never seen again. Well, in April of this year, human remains were found inside the home, and they were, and despite the condition of the remains, because of the unseasonably warm weather, the rains and everything, and DNA testing was inconclusive, dental records were of no use, but various other things they identified the remains as Dennis Day, who was an original Musketeer. And I knew Dennis. I knew his husband, Ernie Caswell, who is in an assisted care facility up in Oregon. I worked with them at the Renaissance Fairs and the Dickens Fair. And Dennis was one of the most generous, warm and loving, talented witty men I ever had the pleasure to work with. Now, I might be a little biased, but all of us who worked with him and knew him are biased towards him. But for me especially, he was one of the people that comforted me, that supported me after my mother passed away. And I was not in a great headspace to be performing, but being out there and among my friends was a comfort. My mother died midweek, and the fair was on at the weekends. And one of the things I remember about Dennis when he was talking to me and pep talking me was he talked about a green umbrella, which is every mannerism or a quirk or a prop that you always use for, it's like a security blanket. You're always carrying it with you. You always have it with you. Then he compared me favorably to Annette Funicello. Thank you. And he and Ernie had a small business called Creature Comfits, where they made these incredible jams and jellies. The favorite one was called Purple because it was made with lavender, and it was just an amazing thing. And Dennis and Ernie had been together since the 1970s, where they met at the Dickens Christmas Fair while Ernie was playing Edward, and Dennis was portraying a vegetable salesman to Cockney, and introduced himself to Ernie, according to Dennis, by handing him a head of lettuce that had a worm in it. And apparently the worm crawled out of the head of lettuce. I wasn't there, I didn't, so I'm only going on what Dennis told me, so, you know. But we've lost, those of us that knew him, lost, in his family, lost a wonderful, wonderful man. And so I'm going to ask y'all to stay tuned for, well.
And now, Musketeers, here's one thing we want you always to remember. Real soon. K-E-Y. Why? Because we like you. M-O-U-S-E. Thanks, Musketeers.
Good night, Dennis. Good night, my friend. And now, stay tuned for Katie Speaks with Katie Klobusish here on netrootsradio.com.